So we have seen this chapter on ease of doing business. So what we have said is that economic survey, it has pointed out that in spite of the fact that India has done well in terms of improving its ranking in ease of doing business index, there are so many problems still that are there when it comes to doing business in India, in terms of registration, in terms of paying taxes, in terms of enforcing contracts and other associated problems. As we have said, practical problems at the ground level, especially faced by these exporters as well as importers. Then from ease of doing a business, the next thing the survey talks about is banks, bank nationalization. The year 1969 was the year when the government had opted for nationalization of banks. In 1969, 14 banks were nationalized. In 1980, 6 more banks were nationalized. So the survey was discussing the impact of this bank nationalization, whether it has benefited the country or not. Definitely on the positive side, it has improved, especially the number of bank branches in rural areas. Rural banking, it has improved. Then through priority sector lending, more number of loans were also given to weaker sections of society, especially agriculture and other weaker sections of society, farmers. And we have also created a huge infrastructure in terms of banks. It gives all the facts related to the number of employees, number of clerical staff, and then officers, everything else. This is it. And then after 1991, as part of reforms, we have allowed more private sector banks also. And we also allowed foreign banks also to come into our country. That is what the survey says. But what is the basic problem here? The basic problem here is this nationalization of banks had more negative consequences than positive outcomes. Why? Because these public sector banks, they had become inefficient because of politicization in the functioning of banks. The NPAs have grown rapidly, non-performing banks. It gives the example of public sector banks and new private banks. New private banks, that means those private banks that had come up after 1991. New private banks. It makes the comparison that maximum amount of NPAs are with these public sector banks. Why? Because, as we have said, politicization of the functioning of banking system. When the banks were nationalized, the government had said that they would clearly delineate ownership from management. The government would retain the ownership, but the management would be completely done in a professional manner. But that never really happened. The government interfered in appointing a chairman as well as the members of these public sector banks. It resulted in complete politicization and it resulted in systematic corruption also. It resulted in systematic corruption. Then the survey talks about the fact that by 2024-25, we have this aim of becoming a $5 trillion economy. If you have to become a $5 trillion economy, what is required is strong financial system, especially strong banking system. it gives the example of United States of America. In United States of America, for United States of America to become economic superpower, the maximum role was played by its banks. And it gives the example of Japan. In Japan, in 1980s, economic revival of Japan depended on its strong banking system. It had 15 banks in top 100 banks in the world at that point of time. Japan. If you look at India, even though we are the 5th largest economy in the world, 5th or 6th, whatever it may be. Sometimes the government says 5th, sometimes 6th. We'll take it as 5.5. Okay? So let us not have any controversy because already the country is undergoing so many controversies. Okay? So if you are 5th largest economy in the world, we have only one bank in the top 100 banks of the world. We have only one bank, that is SBI, and its rank is also 55. SBI's rank is 55. And look at China at this point of time. The number one bank in the world is Industrial and Commercial Bank of China. Commercial and Industrial Bank of China. Here, this Bank of China is the number one bank in the world. If you look at this market capitalization of this bank, it is twice that of 5th and 6th banks of America and Japan. You can see the recent rapid economic growth and development of China was directly correlated to its strong financial system, especially the banking system. And economic survey clearly says that by 2025, if you want to become a $5 trillion economy, India must have at least 8 banks in top 100. We must have at least 8 banks in top 100. Mega banks. Because why these banks are required? They are the ones who will provide credit to industries for infrastructure development as well as industrialization. Without banks, no country can progress because at the end of the day, what is required is investment. And this investment must come from the banks only. They must give loans which fuel investment, which can ultimately lead to economic growth and development also. And what happened in India during these years, last 50 years era of nationalization, our banking system was suppressed due to excessive governmental interference. Too much of politicization. Recently, the government of India, it had opted for merger of banks. And it had said that at this point of time we have around 10 large banks. And what is required is that there is much more merger of the banks. And this is what economic survey says. India should have only around 5 big banks. There are huge banks. And in the public sector cannot have more than 4 or 5 banks. In the private sector you can have 4 or 5 banks. There is no, why? Because these big large banks are necessary to fuel investment, to create infrastructure, to ensure industrialization. And then as I said that it is not enough if you have what you call these mega banks. What is required is you must ensure professionalism in the functioning of banking sector. You must ensure professionalism. You must give functional and financial autonomy. And the economic survey talks about the strengths of our financial system. What are the strengths of our financial system? What is the strength of our financial system? First one is we have implemented this JAM, Jan-Dhan, Aadhaar and Mobile. And as part of this, we have this universal banking. we have provided access to banking to almost a majority of our population. And then we are also using a technology. We are also using technology to improve the banking services in our country. We are using the technology. This is the strength. But what is the problem? The problem is this politicization of public sector banks. So what are the solutions? The solution is, first solution is that we must ensure professionalization in the functioning of these public sector banks. How to ensure this professionalization? Separating ownership from management. Separating ownership from management. Government can retain the ownership, the management can be given to the private sector. Either. Or better solution is privatization of public sector banks. As we always say, government has no business to be in business. Privatization of banks. Then only you can improve your financial system. Next solution economic survey talks about is using technology in a more efficient manner. FinTech, financial technology. How? For example, right now the problem is that unavailability of information, especially within the banking system. What do I do? I will take loans from one bank and then I will show this loan as security to other bank to take more loans. And I will show this as a security and take more loans from other bank. Like this, I will take loans from 10 banks. If I don't repay, all those 10 banks will collapse. Chain reaction will be there. If I am taking loans from ICICI Bank and approaching HDFC and SBI, they don't know what is happening in the financial system. There is no proper information availability to all the actors involved in the financial system. So what is happening is that it becomes very easy for people to deceive the system. That is the reason why what this economic survey has suggested is that to improve our financial system, let there be a separate institution which keeps details about all the financial transactions of banks, especially about details about the loan holders. Who is taking the loan? When they have taken the loan? From which bank they have taken the loan? What are the collateral securities they have given as a loan? Because I can go to one bank, I will say that this is my collateral security, give me loan. I can go to some other bank, I will say that this is the same collateral security can be used to take other loans also. Why? Because the other bank does not know that I have used the same collateral security. That is the reason why this economic survey has suggested that let there be a separate institution wherein we can use technology, financial technology, wherein all these details are updated on real-time basis, and this information should be made available to all banks, whether it is a public sector bank or a private sector bank, so that it becomes almost impossible for people to deceive the banks. And the maximum amount of frauds, if you look at maximum amount of frauds, financial frauds are committed in public sector banks only. Why? Because as I said, there is no proper availability of information. And you are taking loans from different branches of the same bank also. Forget about loans from different banks. You are taking loans from different branches of the same bank by giving the same collateral security also. Okay. In India, people, as I said earlier, we are very intelligent, too intelligent. It becomes difficult for them because they don't have any technology to, what is the reason why someone like Nirav Modi could easily cheat the banks. Why? Because these LOCs and LOIs, they were never put into the system. Computerization, in spite of the fact that our banks had 100% computerization, all the details were never put into the system. That is the reason why he could show the same kind of LOCs and LIs, and he kept on taking loans, 20,000 crores of rupees. Not a small amount. Why these banking frauds are taking place? Because we are not able to use technology properly. That is the reason why it has suggested that let there be an institution which is funded by the banks itself. And this institution can use the latest technology and can keep all the details, so that it becomes difficult for people to cheat the banks, especially public sector banks. That is what economic survey has suggested as part of solutions. This is about financial, this banking sector. And ultimately the solution, as we have said, when it comes to public sector banks is the government must be willing to reduce its control over their functioning. We have this Bank Boards Bureau, the question that was also asked last year. But unfortunately, again, Banks Board Bureau or whatever may be the institutions, the basic thing here is trust. People don't have trust. They don't have trust. You can create as many institutions, that is what economic survey also says. We can create as many institutions as possible unless we create a trust among the people. It becomes difficult to ensure effective functioning of these systems. What is the trust we are talking about here? You have created Bank Boards Bureau, but have you given independence to them? Have you given independence to them in terms of taking decisions related to appointment of directors? No. Still, most of these things are influenced by finance ministry only. That is where the problem is. Institutional integrity is very, very important. That is what economic survey also says. To build trust within the system, what is required is this institutional integrity. There is no point in creating institutions without creating confidence in the actors involved in the system. That is where the problem is. People are not having faith in the banking system because of the absence of independence, especially of public sector banks. And that is the reason why this is about public sector banks. And go further down, cooperative banks. These cooperative banks are full of corruption. Recently, this bank had collapsed in Bombay, Punjab and Mumbai Cooperative Bank, PMC. Why? Because there is no transparency in giving loans. It is the promoters who are taking all the loans also. That is the reason why it has suggested professionalization of banking system. This is about the banking system. And in the financial system, apart from banking, we also have what is called shadow banking. This question can be asked in your prelims also. Shadow banking. Basically, this shadow banking is a part of NBFCs, non-banking financial institutions. They perform all the activities performed by banks, but they are different from banks. What are the activities performed by banks? Basically, attracting deposits and lending money as loans. So these mutual funds as well as NBFCs, what do? They give loans. As we discussed in the morning itself in the previous class, what we have said is that these development financial institutions were discontinued after liberalization. All those DFIs were converted into either private sector banks or some of them were closed down. So there was huge need for long-term finance. And this long-term financial needs were fulfilled by these NBFCs. But again, the problem with NBFCs is that some of them have collapsed recently. L&FS and the One Housing Financial Corporation, DHFC. That created huge amount of stress in the financial system. And that is the reason why this economic survey suggested that there must be proper regulatory mechanism for non-banking financial institutions also, to ensure that again they are not giving loans. There should not be what you call crony capitalism. Whenever they are giving loans, these loans should be given on the basis of proper collateral securities. And that is where again we talk about this institution which we have mentioned earlier, wherein it provides all the details about the capabilities of the loan people who are taking loans, whether it is from banking system or from NBFCs. And another solution that has been provided is that the government should also come out with a DFI. The government must also, it is high time that the government revive these developmental financial institutions to provide long-term financial assistance. This is another solution. Next, continuing with this financial system, another important part of this financial system is stock markets. Stock markets. Again, in India, what is the problem here with the stock markets? In India, the secondary markets are not fully developed. Secondary market. IPOs have a very limited share in the whole stock markets, initial public offerings. But maximum amount of trade takes place in the stock market in the secondary markets. And the government should promote these secondary markets. Why? Because companies, they should be encouraged to take, depend more on equity than on loan. These companies should be, in India, what is the reason why these big industries are collapsing? Because they are heavily dependent on loans than on equities. If you have to improve your financial system, if you look at other developed countries, in other developed countries, these companies depend more on equity than on loans. So if you are taking loan, what happens? It has a contagion effect. You will collapse with yourself. The financial institution which is giving you loans will collapse. With that, it will have a chain reaction also. That is the reason why we must promote what we call secondary markets. We must promote secondary markets so that companies can raise more amount of money through equities also. This is what economic survey had to say about banking and banking system. And there must be proper linkages between these commercial banks and these NBFCs also. Recently in the budget also, Finance Minister had spoken about those things. She had come out with some measures also, which we can see a little bit later. Next topic that she talked about is about privatization. Next chapter in economic survey is about privatization. So if you look at again India, after 1991, we have opted for liberalization, privatization and globalization. For a quite a good amount of time, this privatization was absent. Privatization means basically a transfer of ownership. Transfer of ownership from the government to the private sector. The first generation of economic reforms we have implemented between 1991 and 1993. And the second generation of economic reforms between 2001 and 2003, or you can say 2004, when BJP was in power. So during this second generation of economic reforms, the government opted for privatization. Government opted for privatization through what is called a strategic sale. Select public sector enterprises were identified and the government had privatized them through strategic sale. After that, the government had opted for partial privatization through disinvestment. So what economic survey has said is that this privatization can have huge number of benefits for the government. How? when you opt for this kind of partial privatization, that is by offering shares to people, general public, it will automatically increase the market value of companies. This privatization has lots of benefits, it says. One is, it will provide revenues to the government, much needed revenues to the government. The government requires huge amount of money for infrastructure. Recently the government has said that it requires around 1 or 2 lakh crores of rupees for infrastructure. 1 or 2 lakh crores. How many euros after 1 or 2? As long as many euros as the population of India. Okay, don't worry, don't calculate, you feel bad. So, to become zero also you need some kind of value. So, 1 or 2 lakh crores. Where can the government raise this money? Through this disinvestment and privatization. Second, economic survey says is that it will ensure professionalism in the functioning of public sector enterprises. This privatization has lots of benefits. It will make public sector enterprises which otherwise were unprofessional, they can make them professional. It will ensure efficiency of a public sector enterprise. It will make them efficient. And it will also give money to public sector enterprise for their modernization purposes. They can take the money and they can modernize their public sector enterprise. And it will also benefit the shareholders. The value of the share of the company will definitely go up. Economic survey had given the example of 2 public sector enterprises. One wherein disinvestment had taken place, other one where disinvestment did not take place. It gave the example of SPCL and BPCL. Where in which disinvestment had taken place, it had resulted in a creation of 30,000 crores of rupees, increase in the value of the company by 30,000 crores of rupees. It has benefited everyone. It has benefited the government. It has benefited the shareholders. It has benefited the organization in terms of more profits. It has benefited the management because of professionalization. That is what economic survey has said. It said that wherever the government, wherever it is possible, the government should always look for privatization of public sector enterprises. I'll just give you one example here. In 1956, I think, LIC was started with an investment of 5 crores. Now, what is the market value, capitalization of LIC? If the government has recently decided in the budget that it will disinvest a portion of LIC, what percentage of shares will be sold? 10% of the shares will be sold. And how much the government is expecting to raise? No, only by selling LIC. Total disinvestment is 2.2 lakh crores. The government is expecting around 90,000 crores. So what is the total value? 9 lakh crores. LIC is the most valuable company in India, including both the public sector as well as private sector. 9 lakh crores. How much the government invested? 5 crores. Now you are getting 9 lakh crores. On top of it, LIC has paid 20,000 crores of rupees of dividends to government also. 20,000 crores of rupees dividends to the government. So what we are saying here is that the government has started these public sector enterprises long time back in 1950s and 60s. And thanks to their efficient functioning, their value also had increased. So let the government disinvest from these public sector enterprises and use that money to fund infrastructure development. Disinvesting from public sector enterprises. Either you privatize them or opt for partial privatization in the form of disinvestment. It will be a what you call a win-win situation. The organization also wins in terms of professional experience coming into the board of directors, because if you buy 10% of the shares, you will automatically become the director, and it will be made much more profitable, and the government also will be getting good amount of money. The money can be used to modernize this public sector enterprise, or the money can be used to finance infrastructure needs of the government also. That is what this chapter of economic survey talks about. It says that the government should not shy away. Why? Because as I said that the second generation of economic reforms stopped only at 2003. After that, the government never really spoke about more economic reforms. The most important reform that is need to be implemented at this point of time is the government should again go for aggressive privatization. Either can be completely strategic sale, or it can be in the form of disinvestment. Both of them are needed. Why? Because they are needed from the point of view of country's perspective, and also from the point of view of the perspective of these public sector enterprises, because they would be able to realize their true potential, true value also. That money can be used. And what this economic survey has suggested is that the same thing can be done with the banks also, public sector banks. The same thing can be done with public sector banks also. What it has said is that let the shares be given to the employees. If you look at public sector banks, if you are employee, your commitment to the organization will be only very less, because after 30 years also, you'll be getting only your salary. There is no pension also, only salary. So your commitment to the organization will be very less. How can I improve your commitment to the organization? By offering shares. Why? Because tomorrow, if the value of your company goes up, your bank goes up, you will be benefiting in the form of more value for your shares also. If the company is offering shares to you for 100 rupees, after 10 years, the share value is 1000 rupees. If you had 1000 shares now, after 10 years, you can imagine what is the amount of money you will be having. So offer these shares to the employees. Employees stock options, ESOP, that is what we say. Offer the shares to the employees. Make them partners in the banks, especially public sector banks. How to professionalize? Give the shares to the people. Offer the shares. Similarly, in a public sector banks also, offer the shares to the private people also, so that you will have more efficient and professional functioning of these public sector banks. These are all the solutions which can be implemented very easily by the government, and what is required is only political commitment. The government must take these tough political decisions. That is where you need visionary skills on the part of the political leadership. That is what exactly economic survey also says. It says that please implement these things, offer shares to the employees, ensure professionalism, and wherever it is possible, opt for privatization. Loss-making public sector enterprises, privatize them. What is the point? Take the case of Air India. If the government had opted for a privatization of Air India, say 10 years back, Air India would have commanded a very good price, because the losses were very less. Now nobody wants to buy Air India. Why? Because the net worth is negative. Net worth is negative means if you take all the assets of Air India and compare them to the liabilities, if assets are 100 rupees, liabilities are 110 rupees. That means if you sell Air India left, right and center also, okay, you will end up with losses. You want to spend 110 rupees to buy losses, right? Obviously, that is the reason why nobody wants to buy Air India. Had the government opted for this Air India privatization, say 10 years back, it would have given the government a very good price also. Most importantly, the government would have saved thousands of crores of rupees, which it had put into Air India in the last 10 years. That is what this topic talks about. It says that it gives the example of Air India only. If the government had taken the decision to privatize Air India, say 10 or 15 years back, that decision would have fetched the government good amount of money. Most importantly, it would have reduced the financial burden on the exchequer also. Similarly, public sector banks, had the government given the shares to the employees, they would not have allowed these kind of loans to be given to other people. They would have ensured more transparency, more efficiency, more professionalism. That is what the government could have done. This is what the economic survey talks about as part of the next topic in the syllabus in this economic survey. The next chapter in economic survey is about this GDP estimates. In recent times, we have seen so much of controversy regarding GDP estimates. Former Chief Economic Advisor Arvind Pangaria and Arvind Subramaniam and so many other people have questioned our GDP. They had conducted research, econometricians. They have used various econometric models to come to the conclusion that India's GDP is overestimated by at least 2 to 2.5 percentage points. So what we have done when BJP came to power in 2014, they don't know how to increase the GDP. So what they have done is that they simply shifted the base year from 2004-05 to 2011-12. Suddenly our GDP has increased. Suddenly we are on 8% growth rate. Our Prime Minister has said that you can see. This is what we call Great Indian Rope Trick. Rope trick. Our magicians, they have mastered this art. This rope would be hanging vertically, defying the laws of physics. The same thing was done by the government also. Suddenly, from 4-5% growth rate, we have seen 8% growth rate. And these econometricians, they had come out with their own models to show that we have overestimated our GDP by at least 2.5 percentage points. If the government says that the last quarter GDP was 4.5%, in reality they say that it is only 2%. That is what they were saying. So obviously, economic survey, it has spent a lot of time. It had given so many econometric models also, which you can never understand. Don't worry. Nobody can understand. That is why it is called economics. So, and it had proved that what these people have done, Arvind Subramaniam and Arvind Pangaria and all these people, their estimations of GDP were wrong. Because their growth models, that is what we called in theories, counterfactual theories. If we have used their models to calculate the GDP of other countries, the error was around 4 to 4.5%. So they have said that what is the model they have used to calculate the GDP? They have seen the savings, they have seen the investment, they have seen electricity consumption, they have seen real estate, they have seen stock markets. These are all what you call macroeconomic indicators. They have taken the movement of all these macroeconomic indicators. On the basis of that, they have extrapolated the GDPs. This is what we study in economics, or what you say econometrics. And Arvind Pangaria and Arvind Subramaniam, all these people have come out with these econometric models and to show that India's GDP is overestimated by 2 to 2.5% by taking those parameters. And what economic survey has done in this chapter is that they said that the calculations made by those people were wrong, because the calculations were made on the basis of wrong variables, using wrong econometric models. Because if you go by their calculations, the Western countries' GDPs are also were overvalued, overestimated by 4 to 4.5%. So obviously it is wrong. Whatever we have done is right. That is what this chapter says. Our GDP estimates are right. You can have faith in the government. That is what we said. Trust. You must have faith in the government. When the government says that we are growing at 10% per annum, when our finance minister says that in 2020-21 our growth rate, nominal growth rate will be 10%. When she was giving the speech, everyone started laughing. In Lok Sabha, everyone started making noises. 10%. She had to clarify again in the press conference that she told them that this 10% was nominal growth, not real growth. Nominal growth. Because this year nominal growth was around 7.5%. So she said that we can move up to easily 10% also, nominal growth. So again, this nominal growth depends on, say if 10% is nominal growth, around 4%, 4.5% will be inflation. And real growth will be around 6%. But can the economy grow at 6% also? That is a $5 trillion question. These things will not come cheaply, remember. Everything has a price in economics. So coming back, this basically chapter of economic survey says that whatever the growth estimates done by the government are perfect. This Central Statistical Organization, National Sample Survey Organization, and the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, they are doing excellent job. People of the country should not feel bad about these things. Go home and sleep peacefully. Country is growing very well. It is in safe hands. That is what economic survey says. That's the reason why we don't have to spend much time on that chapter. And the last chapter of the first part of economic survey is what they called it as Polynomials. Basically, it is about food. Polynomials. Thali means, you know what it is. I don't have to tell you. Okay. So, a plate full of food, and you will have to decide what plate it is. Okay. So, what economic survey has proved through this is that in the last 10 years or so, the prices of food had come down in India. Both vegetarian as well as non-vegetarian thali, it had come down. Why are you not feeling good? Feel good, something, when we say something good, you should always feel good. So it has said that people are able to save money because of a decline in food prices. Overall, it has said that people have become, in real terms, relatively richer because of decline in food prices. So next time when you go to restaurant, any restaurant, you show them economic survey. Make them accountable. You say that 10 years back you charge only 40 rupees. Now it has come down. You have to charge only 30 rupees. They will throw you out. Next time onwards, they will be bored in front of the restaurants. UPSC aspirants and dogs are not allowed. Why? Because they study all these stupid things, right? So you take economic survey and show them that this is what the real situation. So this is what the last topic is. So we don't have to worry too much about that. Let us come to the second part of economic survey. And the good thing is that there is not much to discuss in second part. And the best thing is that there is nothing to discuss in budget. Okay. See, good days are achhe din. They are coming to us. There is not much to discuss in budget. I don't know what to discuss also in budget. Because our finance minister, he had spent almost 3 hours reading the budgetary document. This budget document is nothing but our prelims pamphlet. She had given details about all the programs that are implemented by the government, which are asked by UPSC in your prelims. It is a gold mine for your prelims. All the programs, because in the prelims, out of 100 questions, at least every year, 10 questions are only about the programs. Our finance minister has done a great job in collating all the programs and putting them at the one place. So that is where. So let us come to the second part of economic survey. So as I said, the second part of economic survey mostly provides factual information about the status of Indian economy. So the first chapter is basically summation of all the chapters. So we will look from the second chapter onwards. Second chapter starts with the fiscal situation in the country. So what does it say? It basically says that the fiscal developments in the previous year. Now, what is the problem right now? The problem right now is that the government has preponed the budget. Normally, earlier budget was presented in 1st of March or 28th of February, last working day. Now, the budget is presented on 1st of February. So when the finance ministry has to start, budgetary estimates, what is the information it has? If the budget has to be presented on 1st of February, the budget document should be printed, by at least 15th of January, it should go into the press. So, maximum finance ministry will have details up to 10th of January. And financial year starts from 1st of April. So, how many months of information the government will have? April to December. How many months? I know it is difficult for you. 9 months. 9 months. 9 months of information, is it sufficient? Because it will not have crucial information related to the next 3 months. And that is the reason why nowadays, the moment we shifted the budget to 1st of February, all the budgetary estimates are going wrong. Why? Because how do you formulate the budget? On the basis of what you have got in those 9 months, you will come out with the budget. But this 9 months information is not sufficient. In the 9 months also you will not get the complete information, because the statistical information is always received with some amount of time lag only. And because of which what is happening is that, and added to that, last year budget was presented in July. So how many months of information the government has? Only August, September, October, November, December, 5 months maximum, 5 or 6 months information. Can you come out with a new budget with 6 months information? Obviously, that is where the problem for our finance minister. That is where the problem with economic survey also. Because economic survey also does not have full information. Thanks to the fact that we have preponed our budgets. That is the reason why whatever the targets we have fixed in our budgets, fiscal targets, none of them could be realized. And the next year budget again becomes some kind of a lottery, because you are coming out with the budgetary estimates on the basis of the estimates of this year, which again are on the basis of estimates. There is no actuals that are there with the government. You can come out with estimates for the coming year only when you have proper correct information about the current year. If you look at this year, when the finance minister has come out with the budget, it has information for only 6 months. On the basis of that, she has to come out with the budget for coming next 15 months. Because the 3 months also, January, Feb and March, and then again next 12 months, 15 months. That is where the job becomes much more complicated. And that is the reason why we are not able to realize any of the targets. And another problem is that the government is still not very much clear about this the slowdown which we talk about, is it a cyclical or a structural? Cyclical or a structural? The government is still not clear about this. Is it cyclical or structural? That is where the problem is. Because for 8 successive quarters, we have seen GDP going down, from 8% to 4.5%. And that is the reason why, when we read economic survey, especially the second part, all the statistics provided in the second part of economic survey look dubious. They do not look authentic. Why? Because first, we don't have complete information. Second, this does not truly reflect the condition of present Indian economy. Economic survey says that the revenues of the government have increased. We don't know where and how. It has said that the revenues, it has said that revenues of the government, revenue receipts of the government have increased compared to last year. How this kind of magic can take place, we don't know exactly. That is where the problem is. That is the reason why when you look at the second book of, second part of economic survey, we have to take them with a pinch of salt, all the statistics. But what we will do is that we will look at, as I said, more into the analytical aspects. So if you look at the fiscal situation, last year budget has said that we should be able to contain our fiscal deficit to 3.5% of GDP. That is what. But obviously, the government could not realize all the revenues that it had proposed in the budget. The government expected the tax revenues to go up by what percentage? 18%. And what percentage they had gone up? 8%. The remaining small change, 10%. That is where the problem is. That is where the problem is. Last year budget was based again on previous years. And previous year also was a year wherein the government did not come out with a true fiscal position. And that is the reason why the government had asked RBI to give immediate funding in 1.7 lakh crores. RBI had given this 1.7 lakh crores also dividends immediately because the government had huge amount of shortfall in the revenues. But in spite of the fact that it had huge amount of shortfall in the revenues, last year the government had very ambitious targets in terms of revenue collection. On the basis of that, the government also had come out with ambitious expenditure targets. 26 lakh crores. And revenues were expected to be around 22 lakh crores, with 4 lakh crores to be about the fiscal deficit of the government. But again, what happened in the end? Either the government could not realize either expenditure targets or revenue targets, especially tax revenues. For example, last year budget has said that the government would be raising around 1 lakh crores through disinvestment, 1.05 lakh crores. That was the target in the last year's budget. How much amount of money actually the government has got? 18,000 crores. This is the amount of money the government had realized through disinvestment. How much it wanted to raise? 1.05 lakh crores. And the government has said that when the budget was presented, Finance Minister, she said that in the coming 2 months, that is Feb and March, the government will be planning to raise another 65,000 crores through disinvestment. What we have done in 10 months is only 80,000 crores. In 2 months, 65,000 crores, like your preparation. In 10 months you don't study anything, in 2 months you will complete the entire syllabus. Right? You can see so much of similarity between you and Finance Minister. Both of you are at the end of the day daydreamers. Right? And that is where the problem is. So this is what she said, that she will want to raise 65,000 crores of rupees through disinvestment. So if you look at it, again GST collections compared to last year, again GST collections were less. Obviously, why? Why? Because automatically, whenever your economy is going down, it will be reflected in tax collections, tax revenues. And added to that, there is so much of complexity in implementation of GST also. Too many slabs, which makes it much more difficult for people to pay the tax also. GST collections have been very less. And because of which, what happened? The amount of money given to the states also had come down. It has a chain effect. When the central government the revenues are less, the amount of money that will be given to the states also will be less. When the states are getting less amount of money, states also have no option but to depend more on debt borrowings. That is where the problem is. So, continuing with this, what the economic survey has said is that the government has been able to control its debt position, especially public debt. It has said that public debt as proportion of GDP is constant. It also has said that this external debt is comfortable. Our external debt position is comfortable to other countries, in the sense that it will not result in any immediate balance of payment crisis also, because we are able to control our external debt. Overall public debt also, like the question that was asked in your prelims last year also, the government trying to ensure that the overall public debt should be around 60% of our GDP. 60% of our GDP. And the government economic survey also has said that this central government debt will be around 40% of GDP. That is what it has said. But again, what is the problem here? The problem here is that when the government is calculating fiscal deficit, the problem here is that most of the debt of the government is what is called off budget, from off budget sources. For example, the government will be asking public sector enterprises to take loans, and the money will be transferred to the government. So when you look at fiscal deficit, you say that fiscal deficit is only the loans that are taken from that will be going into consolidated fund of India. Public account will not be part of fiscal deficit. So in order to contain fiscal deficit, what the government is doing is that it is depending more on public account, wherein the government is asking the public sector enterprises to take loans. Even this year also, in this budget, I said that the subsidy, food subsidy bill is only, government has said 1,10,000 crores, but it is asking FCI to take 1,30,000 crores of rupees of loans. So that is where the big problem. The FRBM legislation has not been implemented effectively. And most importantly here, as economic survey also points out, in fact in the first part also it was pointed out, the revenue deficit is going up. The component of revenue deficit is very high. Revenue deficit is very high. It is almost 80% of your fiscal deficit, which is a very dangerous, unproductive also. The government has not been able to control its revenue expenditure. Revenue deficit is very high. This is what economic survey is talking about as part of fiscal developments. It has said that the government is making efforts to adhere to FRBM provisions, but there are so many problems here. What are the problems? Obviously, realization of tax revenues, and non-tax revenues are also not going up. Mostly the most important source of non-tax revenue for the government is only through disinvestment. Even disinvestment targets were also not achieved this year. And both the direct as well as indirect taxes are coming down. So on the other hand, what is happening? Because of these low tax revenues, low revenues, the government is forced to cut down expenditure also. And what expenditure the government is cutting down? It is always the capital expenditure, which is facing all the heat, all the time, because you cannot contain revenue expenditure. Subsidies, you cannot reduce the subsidies. Reducing subsidies means suicidal. And then, defense expenditure, obviously you cannot cut down defense expenditure. Then public administration, expenditure on salaries, everything else, it can also be reduced. Interest payments, you cannot say that I don't have money, I will not pay interest. I don't have any interest in paying interest. Government cannot say those things. So, since revenue expenditure is inelastic, whatever may be your income, revenue expenditure has become inelastic. That is what economic survey also has said. Revenue expenditure has become inelastic. And what is elastic is only capital expenditure. So the government is cutting down capital expenditure. That is where the problem. If you cut down the capital expenditure, what happens? Automatically, it will have a huge negative impact on your growth and development. Next, next topic of economic survey talks about external sector. So what does it say? It says that our balance of payment position has become more comfortable. Our balance of payments position, it has become much more comfortable. Why? Because current account deficit has come down. It has come down from 2.1% previous year to 1.5%. Current account deficit has come down. Current account means trade deficit, that is exports minus imports. When you have deficit, it is imports minus exports. Surplus means exports minus imports. Since we never had surplus, we don't have to worry about it. So, we never talk about these things. Even in dreams also, it will never be there. So we don't have to worry. So what it has said is that this current account deficit had come down from 2.1% to 1.5%. Why? Why? Because our imports have come down, so as our exports. We have seen radical reduction last year in our imports as well as exports. What are the reasons why? That is what economic survey points out. What are the reasons why our imports had come down? Maximum share of our imports are basically petroleum products. Almost 80% of our consumption needs are filled only through imports, crude oil. And what happened? The prices of crude oil had come down. It had made our BOP position more comfortable. It had come down. And then government has imposed some conditionalities on gold imports also. Government increased the tariffs. And in the last 1 year, government increased customs duties also, which reduced the demand for imports. That is what economic survey says. Because of which overall our imports had come down. Of course, along with imports, our exports also had come down. Why? Because again, global economic situation. Global trade also, the volume of global trade was coming down, which had impact on our exports also. So our imports had come down much faster than our exports, because of which our current account deficit had come down from 2.1% to 1.5%. That is what the survey has said. And it has said that because of which we have comfortable foreign exchange reserves. They are now around $460 billion. Very comfortable position. $460 billion. But the survey has said that this position, this kind of comfortable position, can be a temporary phenomenon. Why? What are the challenges on the foreign exchange front? One is this US-Iran the war, the so-called fight between US and Iran, it can create problems in this crude prices. Crude prices might go up. And of course, this US-China trade war also. So this situation is comfortable, but only for the time being. In the future, we can again see more stress on our BOP. We can see more stress on our BOP. So that is the reason why survey has said that the government should focus more on increasing exports. We should focus more on increasing exports. Later we will see whether budget has come out with any solutions to these problems. Economic survey talked about the problems, and the budget is expected to provide solutions. This is what it has said. And again, when the global economy recovers, what happens? When the global economy recovers, there will be more demand for crude oil. When there is more demand for crude oil, automatically the global crude prices also will go up. If the global economy recovers, it can benefit India in terms of improve our trade exports, but it can also cause harm to India in terms of increasing the price of crude oil also. That is what economic survey has said. India should be prepared. So India should ensure that this foreign exchange will remain comfortable, because if a balance of payments, this current account deficit worsens, it can result in a depreciation of your currency also in the forex market. From there, then the next topic that survey talks about is monetary situation, monetary policy and monetary situation. If you look at this monetary situation, the RBI has come out with the monetary policy, and what the survey has said is that RBI has reduced repo rates and reverse repo rates continuously for 5 quarters. It had reduced repo rates and reverse repo rates by 110 basis points. 110 basis points. So at present, what is it? 5.15%, the repo rate. Why? Because what is the reason why RBI has reduced the repo rates and reverse repo rates? Because to help the country to come out of recession. In the last quarter, RBI has not reduced the repo rates because of the fears of inflation. That is what the economic survey has said. When it talked about public sector banks, it has said that the NPS remained what it was last year, around 9.3%. NPS was the same. It remained what it was last year, and 9.3%. And then, as we have discussed, the problem is with NBFIs, non-banking financial institutions. And what we have seen is, in case of non-banking financial institutions, their NPS have increased from 6.1% to 6.3%. That is what economic survey says. There's a NPS of non-banking financial institutions have increased. As we have discussed, some of them have collapsed also. And there is enough amount of liquidity within the system. Banks are flush with funds. There is an amount of liquidity, and the interest rates are also relatively less. But the only problem is that even though RBI has reduced repo rates, this benefit was not passed on to the customers by banks. That is only the problem. Ultimately, the investors did not benefit out of a continuous decline of repo rates and reverse repo rates. Why? Because the banks have not passed on the benefits to the customers. In the money market, ultimately the interest rates are still very high. India is still what you call a high cost economy. High cost economy. And what about the future? What about the coming year? This is where inflation becomes very important. As all of us know, monetary policy of Reserve Bank of India, the most important objective is to contain inflation. And what we have seen is that recently, very recently in the month of December and January, this inflation has gone up. It has touched 7% also. It went beyond 7% also. And if you go by MPC, Monetary Policy Committee, inflation, the acceptable rate of inflation should be around between 2 to 6% you can have maximum. Here, so obviously it has gone beyond acceptable limits. So what can you expect from RBI in the coming financial year? You cannot expect RBI to reduce the repo rates. It becomes difficult for RBI to further reduce the repo rates because inflation is high. And there is a very possibility of the country experiencing a stagflation also. Stagnation plus inflation. On the positive side, this inflation is, you can say, mostly cyclical, because mostly this is food inflation, which every year the country witnesses during the months of November and December. So you can say that this is cyclical, so the government need not worry about this kind of inflation. And another thing Economic Survey has pointed out is that this core inflation and headline inflation, core inflation and headline inflation, the difference is coming down drastically. The difference between core inflation and headline inflation, either it is coming down, it is getting reduced. Core inflation is almost same as headline inflation also. Why? Because what is this core inflation and what is this headline inflation? Headline inflation basically takes into consideration all those items which are used by people on a day-to-day basis, essential commodities. And in the last 1 year, what we have seen is, in the last, not 1 year, in the last few years, what we have seen is that food prices are coming down, because of which headline inflation also is less. And core inflation, in core sectors, this inflation is already very low. That is what Economic Survey is also saying. Both of them are merging. There is not much of difference between core inflation and headline inflation. But again, only thing here, the rider here is that in the future, both of them can go up also. Why? Because as we have seen now, food inflation is very high. It is going up. Food inflation is high. And core inflation, when there is a recovery of global economy, this core inflation also can go up. That is the reason why Economic Survey has said that monetary policy will have very little role in the next financial year. All the policy interventions should be from the perspective of fiscal policy, not from the dimension of monetary policy. RBI will have very little flexibility because of the fears of more inflation. So RBI cannot be expected to further reduce the repo rates as well as repo rates. What RBI can do is that RBI can request the banks to pass on the benefits to the customers. But again, the problem is that is what again Economic Survey says. The problem is not about this one. The problem is related to other thing. Why people are not willing to take loans? Because there is no demand. Even if the rate of interest comes down, Will the investors take loans? No. Why? Because there is no demand. You must revive the demand. Consumption demand should be revived so that there will be more investment demand, which can ultimately lead to investors taking more loans, industrialists taking more loans. That is where, as we have said, the role of monetary policy is very limited in the coming financial year. Everything should be done by the government from the fiscal front, budget. Next thing economic survey talks about is next topic it talks about is sustainable development and climate change. This chapter was included in the last few years, sustainable development and climate change. Please remember, this entire chapter you have to read from your prelims point of view. You have to mug up everything in that chapter, because you have lots of questions that are asked from environment, and most of the questions are asked from this chapter only. You have the sustainable development goals, and then the index is also prepared by the government, the performance of the state governments in realizing sustainable development goals. 17 goals are there, and then you have this conference of parties, COP 14 was held in Delhi Declaration. You have Paris Summit. Then you have very recently, where this summit was held, Spain, I think, Madrid. Yes, you should know about all those things. That is mostly part of your ecology, environment. I want you to read the entire chapter. In fact, what I will be doing is that after 2-3 days, I will mark the important pages also that you have to read from this second book of economic survey, especially from your prelims point of view. Because as I said, it has given all the programs implemented by the government. These government programs, every year around 10 questions are asked in your prelims. All of them are there in the tables in the economic survey. You have to read all of them. I will mark them and I will give it to you. And as part of sustainable development, as I said that the government is coming out with this index, state, it has come out with index for state governments. And some of the states which are performing well are Himachal Pradesh, Kerala, Tamil Nadu and Chandigarh. And some of the states which are in the category of aspirants, Assam, Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. We don't have to talk about them. Okay. So, to call them aspirants also doing injustice to the word aspirant. Okay. Yes, sustainable development. That is what. Then next topic is about agriculture. Again, even this budget also has given a lot of importance to agriculture. What economic survey is saying is that since we opted for liberalization, share of agriculture is coming down. Agriculture and allied industries. In the gross value added GVA, the share of agriculture is coming down. It is coming down. Right now it is, according to economic survey, how much, what is the share? It has grown by 2.8%. Otherwise, what is the total share? I think 17%? 17.2%, whatever it may be. Thank you for unwanted statistics. So, share of agriculture and other allied industries is coming down, obviously. But at the same time, the proportion of population dependent on agriculture is still very high. More than 50% of our population still dependent on agriculture for their survival. That is what economic survey says. And what it says is that in the last few years, agriculture has witnessed too much of instability. 1 year it will go at 5%, next year 2%, next year 0%. Then suddenly it will go to 5%. It is going down. Similarly, before last year it was 5% and this year it is only 2.8%. So that is where the problem is, agriculture. And in recent times, we have tried to expand agriculture, by including livestock and horticulture and everything else also. And we also are focusing on food processing industries. When we look at the budget, we'll talk about all these things in a more detailed manner, because in the budget it has talked about 16 different reforms, mostly related to agriculture, rural development, and irrigation infrastructure and everything else. We look at all of them, because at the end of the day, revival of rural economy depends only on improving agriculture. And then the industrial sector. When you look at industrial sector, again industrial sector has witnessed stagnation. The index of industrial production has grown only by 0.6% last year, compared to 5% previous year. That is what economic survey has said. IIP has grown only by 0.6% compared to 5% earlier. Agriculture was growing by 2.8% compared to 5% last year. Still, economic survey never used the word recession. It says that there is moderation in growth. I don't know what is moderation in growth. When you say that it is coming down, straight away say coming down. There is moderation in the growth. That is what, we can never understand these things. Obviously, it is the manufacturing sector which was bearing the brunt of a slowdown. Textile industry, manufacturing, and other core industries also have seen drastic decline, including iron and steel industry, power sector. All these sectors have witnessed slowdown. That is what economic survey has said. And when it comes to service sector, service sector is almost now 55% of our GVA, gross value added. It is around 55%. And even this service sector also had witnessed slowdown this year. That is what economic survey has said. It includes this information technology, banking, financial services, tourism, and all other services. All of them have witnessed slowdown. That is what economic survey talks about. Then the last chapter of economic survey talks about human development. And economic survey says that India has vastly improved its position in HDI. There is huge amount of improvement in our position in terms of HDI. We have improved from 130 to 129. Very significant. That is what economics survey, they have clearly written that there is significant improvement. Just like you people, in one examination you will get 5 marks, next examination 6 marks. 20% improvement in marks. Fastest growth. That is what economic survey says. You don't know whether to laugh or cry. So it has said that there is significant improvement from 130 to 129. People are asking, enough is enough. We don't want much more. Let us go back to 140, 150s only. Okay. So that is what it says. That is what it says, significant improvement. And of course, it talks about everything. And it also says that employment also has increased from 8% to 9.98%. Don't ask these kind of questions. That is the reason why we have Sedition Act. When you raise these kind of stupid questions, it has said that employment growth in 2011 and 12 was 8%. Now it is 9.8%. That means in 10 years, 1.8%. Huge amount of people now are saying, please, we don't want employment. this kind of incredible increase in employment. So that is what the economic survey has. That is what it says. It has increased from 8% in 2011-12 to 9.98%. And it also has said that there is a more increase in women employment also. Women employment, especially in formal jobs. If you say Nirmala Sitharaman, it is fine. Okay. No problem. Women employment also has increased. And then it also has said that thanks to Ayushman Bharat, health situation in the country has improved drastically. Drastic improvement in health. Incredible. The health of the economy as well as the country is, that is what survey says, what can I do? It has said that Ayushman Bharat and Mission Indradhanush, it was implemented so effectively that people are asking the government, stop it. It has improved so much. That is what it says. Next, now housing also. It says that 96% of people in urban areas have houses. 96% of people in urban areas have houses. You know these kind of things? This is what is called incredible India. It says that, it is saying that the government program, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, rural as well as urban. Thanks to PMAY, urban, 96% of people in urban areas have houses. They are saying no, we don't want more houses now. If we have more houses, we'll give them only on rent. Yes. So that is where it says. And it says that around, again, in rural areas, around 77% people have houses. That is what economic survey says. Thanks to all these things, we have improved from 130 to 129. And that is what economic survey says. So I think this is more than enough. More than this, it becomes difficult for us to digest also. So let us come and look at budget. As I said that in this part 2 of economic survey, I'll give you the important pages which you have to remember from your prelims point of view. I said that it had lots of developmental and welfare schemes of the government, programs of the government. So all those things are important for you from your prelims point of view. Let us look at the budget. So we have in the previous session, we have spoken about the problems that the country was facing. The problems are basically slowdown of economic activity. Problems are jobless growth. Problems are agricultural stagnation. Problems are rural demand. We are not able to revise this rural demand. And problems are how to increase the investment as well as consumption demand. Let us see whether the budget has answered these questions or not. And the problem is that finance minister does not have much of a flexibility when it comes to finding solutions to all these problems. Problems are more structural, whereas budget can provide only immediate short-term solutions. He cannot expect a budget to provide long-term solutions to structural problems. So keeping that in mind, we'll have to look at the budget. Did the finance minister come out with any bold initiatives, or it is more of a conservative incrementalism? That is what we'll have to look at. And the first record of our finance ministry is that the budget is the longest budget in terms of the number of pages and also in terms of the speech also. She had broken her own records. And of course, she could not complete the speech also. Last 2 pages she could not read because standing for 3 hours and reading it is not easier. It cannot be done by everyone. You know? Right? And the best part of it is that he is only reading from prepared text. She is not saying anything extempore. She is not speaking extempore. She was only dictator. That means dictating from the notes. Even then also that she could not do it. The problem is that our finance ministers always have problems with their health. Earlier finance minister, most of the time he was in ICU. Country was also in. So the health of a finance minister is always closely linked to the health of economy. And the previous finance minister was in jail. We are not lucky with finance ministers, right? So she had given a very long speech, 48 pages there. So what did she say? As usual, the budget speech started with praising Prime Minister, saying that under the visionary leadership of our Prime Minister, the country has achieved remarkable progress which nobody could see. Because the people only can feel this success, they cannot see it. And then she said that for the coming financial year, she had come out with her proposals. So she said that she was dividing the budget into 3 parts. First one is, she called it as aspirational India. Aspirational India, we are not talking about Bihar and UP. You know? Second part, she talked about economic development. And the third thing, caring society. We don't know what it is, but we will try to find out. Caring society. These are the 3 things she spoke about. As part of aspirational India, she focused on agriculture, rural development, and wellness, then water and sanitation, then education and skills. Agriculture, rural development, wellness, water, sanitation, education and skills. Then as part of economic development, she focused on industry, commerce, investment, infrastructure, and industry, commerce, investment, infrastructure, and new economy. This new economy is basically IT sector and knowledge-based economy. As part of caring society, the budget was focusing on women and child development. It focused on social welfare, then on culture and tourism, then climate change. Since we cannot change, let us change climate. That is what she was trying to say. Climate change. Then it also focused on governance. So this is what it is about. So what she did, she has done as part of aspirational India. She had come out with 16 reforms which she spoke about, which cover all these things. 16 action points in agriculture. It includes agriculture, rural development, and other things. What are they? She was trying to address all the problems related to agriculture and rural development, starting with land. So what she has said is that the model land ceiling legislations will be passed by all the state governments. Model land ceiling legislations will be passed by all the state governments. What is the objective of this model land ceiling legislations? To give rights to tenants. To give rights to tenants. Niti Aayog also has suggested that this is one of the most important agrarian reforms that we have to implement. Why? Because we have huge amount of what is called absentee landlordism. We need these tenancy reforms. If the tenants are given security over land, they can introduce many changes. They can use mechanization, they can use machines, they can focus on improving quality of the soil, they can go for more irrigation, they can also invest more. As long as you don't have any security related to the land, you will not be able to do anything. That is the reason why she said that this model land ceiling legislation should be passed by all the state governments. Please remember, all the 16 points we are talking about here. We will not talk about all the 16 points because we have time. We are busy also. Unlike finance minister, we are busy also, right? So we cannot talk about all the 16. We will look at most important ones. So all these reforms have to be implemented only by state governments, because at the end of the day, agriculture is part of state list. The next thing she spoke about is encouraging contract farming in agriculture. Encouraging contract farming in agriculture to ensure better agriculture industry linkage. Encouraging this contract farming. Next thing, while talking about irrigation, the focus is more on what we call micro irrigation. The focus will be more on micro irrigation. Especially the focus will be on this drip irrigation and sprinkler irrigation. Economic survey also last year, economic survey also has said that we should move from land productivity to water productivity. The government is implementing so many schemes. As part of the budget, they have increased the allocation for some of these flagship schemes of the government. What are these flagship schemes? Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana, watershed development. They have increased more allocation also. Next thing the budget has proposed is it has focused on this solar irrigation, solar power. So what it has said is that there is huge amount of barren land is there in the country, and we have huge amount of availability of solar power. You can ask farmers to have these solar pump sets, and the government would finance to buy them, to help them to buy these solar pump sets, and the power that they are generating can be sold to the state governments, and they can make a good amount of money also. That is what it has said. This barren unirrigated land can be used by farmers in a more productive manner. That is what it has suggested. But again, there are so many ifs and buts in these kind of projects. First of all, who will finance? Farmers. Second one is maintenance costs. Third, power is generated. It has to be transmitted also. And then fourth, there must be buyers also, because the country already has power surplus. There must be buyers also. So from now onwards, whatever the programs that we are talking about, you can call them as daydreams. Okay? Otherwise, economic survey in the budget called it as flagship schemes of the government. This is solar pump sets. That is what they have said. Next thing, the budget as far as agriculture is concerned, it focused on this agricultural warehousing and marketing. That is the reason why this budget has proposed what is this to it had come out with two major schemes in a Krishi Rail and then Krishi Udan. That means farmers would be flying. Krishi Rail and Krishi Udan. Basically, you have a separate train. Basically, it will be carrying perishable products. Maximum amount of perishable, these products are not coming into the market. Why? Because we don't have proper storage and transportation facilities. That is the reason why the government has said that they would come out with these two important things, Krishi Rail and Krishi Udan. They will have the facilities to store them at right temperatures so that they remain fresh when they reach their destinations also. It would be helping the farmers. Next, continuing with this, what budget also has proposed as far as farmers is concerned, credit also, agricultural credit. This year, the target is 15 lakh crores of rupees. The target is 15 lakh crores of rupees. The government is expected to provide 15 lakh crores of rupees of credit to agriculture sector. The government. This is another important thing that the government is planning for agriculture sector. Then another thing the government is focusing on this livestock. Livestock has become a very important part of our agricultural and allied activities. The government has said that they want to focus more on this livestock. National Livestock Mission is also there. All these things will be asked in your prelims only. As I said that this is gold mine for your prelims. If they are not, if at all they are implemented at the ground level, it will be great. Otherwise, all these things will be asked in your prelims only. Livestock mission. Similarly, we have National Horticulture Mission. And then the government is also focusing on doubling milk production, doubling milk output, and doubling milk processing capacity by 2025. And then they have also fixed targets for fish production, 200 lakh tons of fish production. And then they also focus on food processing industries. Another important is food processing industries. The program is there, PM Sampada scheme is there, food processing industry. It talks about mega food parks and improving storage facilities, warehousing facilities and other facilities. And then there is this project called PM Kusum. What is this PM Kusum? Same thing which we talked about now. Solar pump sets. For 20 lakh farmers will get solar pump sets as part of this PM Kusum. Then the government is focusing on these extension services also. Extension services for agriculture sector, especially linking this research institutes with farmers to provide complete information to the farmers. And then the government is also focusing on multiple crops, because you must preserve the fertility of the soil also. Monocultivation to multiple crops. But again, in budget there is some kind of confusion there, because in the budget the government had come out with one district, one crop. That results in monocultivation. This monocultivation can result in a decline in the fertility of the soil also. So there is a little bit of confusion here, but no problem. It will not be implemented. If it is implemented, then there will be problem. Otherwise, it will not be implemented. And then the government from agriculture, it talked about wellness, water and sanitation. As part of this, the government has said that under PM Jan Arogya Yojana, more than 20,000 hospitals will be empaneled for this program. Private hospitals, 20,000 private hospitals will be empaneled for this program. Then government also has launched this scheme, TB harega, Desh jeetega. What nonsense is this? TB harega, Desh jeetega. Campaign launched to end TB by 2025. This health campaign. And the government also proposed PPP, public-private partnership in health sector. Public-private partnerships in health sector. And the government also has expanded this scheme. What is this scheme? Jan Aushadhi Kendra. What is this scheme? Jan Aushadhi Kendra's scheme is extended to all districts by 2024. I don't know what is this scheme, but you will find out. Because only you unfortunate souls have to read about all these schemes. This is also there. And of course, the entire country had become ODF. You must believe also. It has become ODF. That is what it has said. Next, regarding education and skills, what the government is doing. Government will be starting around 150 higher educational institutions. It will be starting 150 higher educational institutions with apprentice courses embedded also. Apprenticeship courses, that means this is vocational education wherein you will also be given training so that you will become unemployed after that. Till now it is unskilled labor which is unemployed, now skilled labor. You got it, all these things. Because I can see that in front of me. So this is what. And another program the government is launching is that it is providing internship opportunities for fresh engineers to work in urban local bodies. Where are urban local bodies? And fresh engineers will be given internship in these urban local bodies regarding how to how to do whatever you want. Fresh engineers. Then special courses will be given, special courses for people to improve their skills, especially for those who are seeking employment abroad. The government, what they will be doing is that they will be teaching you special skills also, so that you can get a productive employment not only in India but also in Pakistan, abroad, right? This is what another scheme they have come out with. But don't ask me where is the money for all these schemes. Dreams don't cost much. Okay. The only thing that is required for you is you should be able to have a sound sleep. Okay. So this is what. When it comes to new economy, the government has come out with a national mission on quantum technologies and application, especially for new economy. These are things that, as I said, they will be asking in your prelims. National mission on quantum technologies and application with an expenditure of 8,000 crores. The government has proposed this national mission on quantum technologies with an outlay of 8,000 crores. This is what the government has said as part of education and skills. When it comes to industry and infrastructure, the government has proposed that it will be spending 102 lakh crores of rupees on infrastructure. 102 lakh crores of rupees through public-private partnerships. That means private sector would be investing this money. The government believes that 80% of the money will be invested by the private sector, 20% can be done by the government. This is what the government has said. 20% means 20 lakh crores. Where is the money? Nobody knows. But government has said that we will spend it, don't worry. Okay. Then National Textile Mission. National Textile Mission, it has been launched for a period of 4 years. Then the government also has given lot of benefits of National Textile Mission. Then lot of benefits for MSMEs also. Lot of benefits are being given for MSMEs also. And then the government also has said that 100 more airports will be constructed under UDAN. 100 airports under UDAN. Don't ask me where. 100 more airports in UDAN. Similarly, 150 passenger trains will be run by private sector through public-private partnership, privatization of railways. 150 passenger trains. Next, the government will be launching soon National Logistics Policy. As we have said earlier, the basic problem with ease of doing business, logistics is a major issue. The government has said that solution we are coming in the form of National Logistics Policy. Then all the problems will be solved. Then you will have more Tejas trains also, super fast trains, especially for tourist destinations. Then power sector, the power sector reforms. The government has said that they would be replacing conventional energy meters with prepaid. This is important reform. Prepaid smart meters. Prepaid smart meters. What is this prepaid smart meters? How it is useful for us? How it can be useful? You cannot control anything. Don't worry. I will tell you, don't worry. He cannot control anything. I like this kind of innocence all the time. So, these prepaid smart meters are like prepaid mobile cards, mobile era. What a recharge things. So, what it says is that it is giving options for the customer. If I want electricity from Tatas, I can take electricity from Tatas. If I want electricity from Reliance, I can take it from Reliance. Introducing competition in service delivery mechanisms through prepaid smart meters. This is one of the important reforms. It should be good provided it is implemented. It gives more choices to the people. Then people can opt for that service provider who can ensure continuous supply of electricity at low cost also. This is what the government is trying to introduce as part of power sector reforms. Next, the government is also expanding national gas grid. This national gas grid will be expanded up to 27,000 kilometers. This is another thing the government will be doing. As we have said, the government also will be spending around 103 lakh crores of rupees on infrastructure, national infrastructure projects. And then the next one is caring society. As part of caring society, what the government will be doing? As part of caring society, more than 6 lakh Anganwadi workers, 6 lakh Anganwadi workers will be equipped with smartphones. They will become smart. And the government will be appointing a committee to give suggestions regarding reducing MMR. The moment the committee gives suggestions, automatically it will be reduced. And these are all the major policy announcements. Next, culture and tourism. What the government is doing? Government is proposing Indian Institute of Heritage and Conservation, a separate organization, Indian Institute of Heritage and Conservation, and under the Ministry of Agriculture, culture only. Both of them are one and same. Culture and agriculture. So we are not wrong. Okay. As we say, the only culture people in North India know is agriculture. So under Ministry of Agriculture only you can say. Next, another thing is that government has identified 5 archaeological sites to be developed as iconic sites. All these questions can be asked, as I said, in prelims. Where are those sites are located? What are the places? Haryana, UP. With common sense you can easily identify. Finance Ministry is from Tamil Nadu. So one site will be there in Tamil Nadu. Prime Minister is from Gujarat. One site will be there in Gujarat. UP, always it has to be there because it has only history but no present or future. So common sense, Haryana, like this. And Northeast one has to be there. So that is how. Then on environment and climate change, this is what Economic Survey also has suggested in its report on environment. It has said that there should be a coalition for disaster resilience infrastructure. The government has mentioned it in budget also. There will be a coalition for disaster resilient infrastructure, CDRI. And this will be taking up all aspects related to disaster management, especially to reduce the pollution, to reduce air pollution. That is what the government has said. And then, in this year budget, on the taxation front, the government introduced reforms in direct taxes, especially income tax. It has introduced reforms. What is the objective of reform? To simplify. But here, the government has, now after every 2.5 lakhs, the slab will change. After some time, government will say that after every increment of 100 rupees in your salary, you will be going into another slab. It has introduced, till now, up to 2.5 lakh rupees you don't pay any tax. Between 2.5 lakh rupees you will pay 10%. Now the government has said that up to 5 lakhs you will not pay any tax. From 5 to 7.5 lakh rupees, 5%? Yes. Then 7.5 to 10, 10%. 10 to 12.5, 15%. 12.5 to 15, 20%. And above 15 lakhs, 30%. This is what the tax. And the government has given option for the people, either to continue with going to the new taxation regime or the old tax. The difference here is that if you are opting for the new taxation regime, there will not be any exemptions which people were getting. There will not be any exemptions. You will not have any kind of exemptions, whether it is, if you are taking insurance, if you are having a house loan, or medical expenses, or HRA, any kind of exemptions will not be there. And the government also has abolished this dividends distribution tax to make it easier for industry. And of course, last year the government had reduced the corporate taxes also. And the government has increased customs duties on many products also. It has increased customs duties on many products. As far as GST is concerned, the government cannot do anything without the approval of the state governments. All the changes in the GST has to be done by GST Council. The government cannot do anything on its own. So finally, after doing all these things, Finance Minister, she said that this year she was using the provision in FRBM legislation. What is the provision in FRBM legislation? If the circumstances demand, the government can relax the FRBM targets by 0.5%. So the Finance Minister has said that she is expecting this fiscal deficit to be 3.8% of GDP with a nominal growth of 10% of GDP. That is what she has said. And she also said that she was expecting to raise around more than 2 lakh crores of rupees through disinvestment. Especially maximum amount of money will be raised through disinvestment of LIC. So if you look at the budget in general, and another important thing is 15th Finance Commission recommendations were also made public. I will be giving you the 15th Finance Commission recommendations also. So this 15th Finance Commission had come out with its own formula for distribution of tax revenues. It has completely changed the previous formula. What it has done, it has taken into consideration, please remember, when 14th Finance Commission had given the recommendations, immediately the question was asked in your prelims about 14th Finance Commission recommendation, especially the devolution of tax revenues, the formula. So 15th Finance Commission also can be asked. It has taken into consideration population, area of the state, then forest and ecology, then demographic performance. This is the new one that the Finance Commission has introduced. Nobody knows what do you mean by demographic performance. And the last one is tax efforts. This is what they have taken to decide the devolution of tax revenues. And I think here it is not clear regarding these shares. Area, first one is population, second one is area, third one is forest and ecology, fourth one is income distance, fifth one is demographic performance, and the last one is tax effort. It has included these variables to decide the devolution of tax revenues. And 15th Finance Commission has suggested that 41% of overall tax revenue should be given to the states. 14th Finance Commission, 42%. Why 41% now? Because J&K has become part of now Union Territory. So the 1% will be for J&K. That is what it has said. And then another important change it has made is population. They are taking 2011 census. Till 14th Finance Commission it was 1971 census. Obviously, what happened? Especially South Indian states have lost out. Karnataka was the state which had lost out very significantly. Its share had come down by almost 1.7%. And states like Andhra Pradesh and Kerala and Telangana have lost out. Whereas Tamil Nadu share has slightly increased. The biggest increase is of course for UP and Bihar. Obviously it has to be for UP and Bihar. They have got maximum share. And if you look at, as I said, in a states like in Telangana or Kerala or Karnataka, they had lost out. If you take Karnataka, earlier it was 4.71%, now it is 3.65%. Kerala 2.5%, and now it is 1.94%. So these states all these states have lost out because it was changed from 1971 to 2011 census. And obviously, states like Kerala have lost out. 15th Finance Commission. As I said that it has come out with the proportion also. What is the percentage here? But in this diagram, it is not clear. I will be giving them separately. It is not clear here. Otherwise, overall, what we can say is that it has resulted in what we call South Indian states compared to other states, thanks to changes in the criteria. So this is about this budget. In fact, the report of the 15th Finance Commission also was tabled on the floor of the House. The report also had come, which is important for us from our both prelims as well as mains point of view. So if you look at overall budget as such, let us try to analyze the budget. What are the best things? What are the good things? And what are the bad? What did the budget do? What did the finance minister do? The best is about introducing this kind of reforms in tax. These tax reforms are long overdue. And finance minister also has said that she would come out with a tax charter. Just like Syrian charters, she would be coming out with a tax charter. Basically, this tax charter will give information about the rights of taxpayers and the responsibilities of the government, which is a very good the reform. Next, this abolition of DDT also, dividend distribution tax. It can help the government in attracting more investment, especially foreign investment also. Dividend distribution tax. Next thing the finance minister has done, a good thing that she has done from a budget point of view, is just a minute, I forgot, because best things are very little, so it becomes very rare, it becomes difficult to remember. What else she has done good thing in the budget? They're all administrative measures. I'm talking about from fiscal policy point of view, what are the good things that she has done in the budget. Yes, next thing she has done is this LIC, disinvestment, privatization, which is a very good thing, because government requires in a badly huge amount of funds. That is what she has done. And then what are the other things she has done? Other important things, they may not be considered best, they are good. All the reforms that we have talked about, especially in agriculture, they're always good, but the only thing is that implementation is the problem. Whether you're talking about solar pumps, whether you're talking about irrigation, whether you're talking about model land ceiling legislations, whether you're talking about contract farming, whether you're talking about increasing agriculture credit to 15 lakh crores of rupees, they're all good administrative measures. And what is the bad about the budget? First one is complete failure of the finance minister to reduce subsidies. Subsidy bill has not been reduced at all. And what she has done, on the other hand, instead of reducing the subsidies, she has transferred the subsidies to FCI. The loan burden has been transferred to FCI, Food Corporation of India. Already Food Corporation of India is highly inefficient and corrupt. It would become more unviable economically with this loan burden, which she could not have done, she should not have done. Because her objective is to reduce the fiscal deficit. That is the reason why she has transferred all these subsidies. She has failed to reduce these subsidies, whether it is food subsidies or fertilizer subsidies. Fertilizer subsidies also did not come down. She spoke about this reducing implementing NBS, nutrient-based subsidy scheme, but that has not been successful. Still, the consumption of urea is very high. We have not moved towards ideal in an NPK ratio 4:2:1. She has not taken any specific measures also to move towards this ideal NPK ratio. Subsidies is one area where the government has failed. Next thing where budget has done very badly is in terms of raising custom duties. When you are talking about promoting a trade, if you are raising the customs duties, automatically it will impact your trade. She should not have done these things. When you want more private investment, foreign investment, when you want more foreign trade, this is what you are not expected to do, which she has done. Next thing, she has failed to implement power sector reforms. Uday has been a failure. Uday has been a failure. Through Uday, what the government has done? The government has only transferred, the central government has transferred the liabilities of DISCOMs to state governments. It has not implemented power sector reforms. The smart meter scheme is important but cannot be effective unless the state government implement these power sector reforms, especially reducing power subsidies, free irrigation, free power. Next thing in the budget which she has not done, which she could have done, is she could have implemented, she could have simplified these tax structures. Income tax, she made it much more complicated with so many tax slabs and so many tax rates. So you are giving more work to the auditors rather than reducing the. On one hand, she said that she wanted to promote self-filing of IT returns. With so many tax slabs and everything else, you always require the help of CAs. Obviously, this is not good in the long-term perspective. Why? Because you want simplified tax structures. She has unnecessarily complicated the things. Next thing is her projections. When she said that fiscal deficit will be 3.8% of GDP, that can also be questioned. Why? Because her projections are based on very robust revenues, and most important thing here is raising more than 2 lakh crores of rupees from disinvestment. In the previous year, you had only raised 18,000 crores. Can you move from 18,000 crores to 2 lakh crores? Everything depends on this. Otherwise, if you are not able to raise, what the government will be doing? It will be asking one public sector enterprise to buy the shares of other public sector enterprises. That is where she has not she could have been a little bit more circumspect here. And next thing is that this education and health, they continue to be neglected. Real increase in education and health is negative. Compared to last year, there is a nominal increase in the expenditure. Take for inflation, then real increase in the expenditure is negative only. This is another thing where she has failed. Education and health. These two sectors continues to be neglected by the government. Next thing, where she could have done something, where she did not do, on infrastructure and capital expenditure. Capital expenditure continues to remain stagnant in the budget. Why capital expenditure continues to remain stagnant? Because the government simply could not control revenue expenditure. Capital expenditure continues to remain stagnant. When she said that she wants to spend 103 lakh crores of rupees, she has not come out with any road map on how she is going to raise this amount of money, 103 lakh crores of rupees. That is the reason why this budget is more of a policy document, what you wish to see in the future, than a proper financial statement. Proper financial statement will give you complete inner details, micro details about how you are going to realize the targets. This budget is most like a policy document which mostly gives you information about the wishes, ambitions, desires of the government. She said that she wants to spend 103 lakh crores of rupees, but where is that money? She said that she wants to spend more amount of money on agriculture. And another thing is that she has reduced allocation for NREGA. When you are talking about reviving rural demand, how can you revive this rural demand? Either by improving agriculture or by focusing more on NREGA, putting more money in the hands of the people. When you reduce your allocation for NREGA, automatically it becomes difficult to revive rural demand. So in the end, she could not do anything to raise consumption demand or investment demand. This is where we started in the morning. Right? And after more than 5 hours of discussion, did we come out with any solutions? That is where the problem is. Because this income tax changes, it will be like 6 and half a dozen. What is the difference between half a dozen and 6? That is what the difference between previous income tax and the new income tax regime. In the previous income tax regime, you are paying high taxes with lots of exemptions. Now they have removed all the exemptions and reduced the taxes. There is no difference between 6 and half a dozen. At the end of the day, you are not able to revive consumption demand. Investment demand, private investment can increase only when there is public investment. There is no money with the government because capital expenditure remained stagnant. That is where the problem is. She could have taken some more bold decisions like closing down some of these public sector enterprises, loss-making public sector enterprises. She could have taken more bold decisions in terms of privatizing more public sector enterprises or offloading the shares of a public sector enterprise. She could have been more dynamic with her taxation policies. She could have given all these tax benefits with tax exemptions, at least for 1 or 2 years, to revive private consumption demand. And she could have been a little bit more dynamic in terms of her spending also, without worrying about fiscal deficit. But again, I said that where we started and where we have ended, that is where the problem is. She could have been a little bit more bold, but she opted for conservatism. Let us see whether she would be successful or not. For the sake of the country, let us hope that she would be successful. That is where we can only hope for. Yes?
FPI increased from 9% to 15%. So what kind of effect it will be there on FPI? Normally FPI is 10% and below 10% is FPI.
FPI.
So now it is increased to FPI is increased to 15% means
So, see the FPI foreign portfolio investment increased from 9% to 15%. Why? Because FDI is getting FDI is more difficult than attracting FPI. Foreign portfolio investment means foreigners coming and investing in your shares through participatory notes. So now if you are increasing from 9% to 15%, it means that you will be attracting more foreign exchange. That is the only thing advantage.
But FDI will remain the same.
FDI will be different. You want more FPI. If we want more foreigners to come and invest in your stock.
Withholding tax.
Withholding taxes, there are all different kinds of taxes. Why do you want to know all the things? That's why don't read too much.
And what is it? The undivided. And what is it? The undivided Hindu family. What is it?
Undivided Hindu family. Karunanidhi. Undivided Hindu family means, everyone, grandparents, parents, children, grandchildren, everyone staying together. Undivided Hindu family. Divided means.
Only tax separately on them. Why not others?
You ask finance minister. You are asking all right kind of questions. Wrong person. Fortunately, for myself, I am not the finance minister. Unfortunately, for the country, I am not the finance minister. So that is the thing. So you don't have to worry. You can, as I said that I will give you important pages, all these programs which are mentioned in the economic survey. I will give you in 1 or 2 days time. You can collect it from the office. And whatever that we have discussed, as I said, synopsis, it is there. You will be getting it now. And then if you have time, you can read the economic survey also. Otherwise, you don't have to read economic survey. Whatever we have done in the class will be more than sufficient. Right? All the facts are there in the document which you will be getting. All the revenue deficits, fiscal deficits, money supply and everything else. Right? That's enough. Best of luck for your examination. Right.